Hey, everybody, it's Tom Webster from Sounds Profitable, and it's time for this week's Data Decoded. Very important topic this week. And I want to start with, I think, something I've been wanting to get off my chest for a long time. And that is my favorite Barry Manilow song. I'm sure you have a favorite Barry Manilow song. Is it Copacabana, the hottest club north of Havana? No. Is it I Write the Songs? No. Is it Mandy? She came and she gave without taking. No, it's not that. It's Like a Good Neighbor, State Farm is There. Before Barry Manilow wrote the songs that make the whole world sing, he made a living writing jingles, and he wrote that jingle for State Farm. He wrote I'm Stuck on Band-Aid Brand because Band-Aid's stuck on me. I know a jazz pianist named Jim Brickman who got his start in the same way, who wrote The Unsinkable Taste of Cheerios and a Pontiac jingle and a bunch of others. Jingles are important, and I deeply love jingles, but I deeply love sonic branding of all kinds because it presents a shortcut to the brain. It's a piece of something familiar that paves the forest path a little bit for something that might be unfamiliar to come. And there's some science behind this, and part of that is the fact that we process sound faster than we process sight. When we hear something, it tickles those little hairs in our ear and goes right to our brain. It's translated directly into electricity. Things that we see, on the other hand, are sort of energy that's then translated to chemicals and then translated back to electricity again. So, I mean, we're not talking about a huge delay here, but sound is definitely the quickest path into the brain. And that's the reason why sonic branding and jingles have been so important to brands, whether it's original music like the Intel Inside jingle that I'm sure you've heard, or it's licensed music. Certainly, the Rolling Stones licensing Start Me Up for Windows and Eric Clapton for Michelob are some sort of legendary examples of all this. But the benefit of a jingle and of sonic branding is, again, it's a well-worn path. It's something that you can burn in that makes listeners instantly comfortable and familiar, so that what then comes after, the new messaging, is they're more receptive to it, right? And this is sort of a twist on the old concept and rhetoric called the known new concept, that you start with something known before you introduce something new, and it's an entree to that. I go very deep on jingles and sonic branding. They're incredibly important to me. Some sounds, very famous sounds, have been copyrighted. You can't use them. The sound that Homer makes, you know the one. A lawyer will shoot you in the face if you use that. I think the first copyrighted sound were the bell tones for the NBC jingle, right? And even entities like Chili's, the restaurant, use sonic branding. When they send their fajitas out of the kitchen, they throw a little water on to make that sizzle. You don't need that. They wouldn't normally sizzle like that, but they kind of make you want fajitas. I mention all of this because a report came out just last week from an entity called Soundout, and they put out a report called the Soundout Index for 2023. And they looked at the performance and recognition of some of the world's most well-known kind of sonic identities, right? Everything from the number one most recognized sonic identity, which is Hot Pockets, believe it or not. And I thank Jim Gaffigan for that. But also things like Nationwide. Nationwide is on your side. That known piece of information starts every new commercial, so that, again, it just paves, it's that well-trodden forest path that makes you slightly more receptive to the message. And I think all of these things are important to podcasters. And there's two things about this report that I want to highlight. Number one of the interesting things, and you'll see it on this graph here, is that in terms of recognition of a lot of these sonic brands, Gen Z lags significantly behind 25 plus. And what's interesting about that is that it complements extremely well a finding that we had in our most recent study, The Medium Moves the Message, and that is that Gen Z are simply being exposed to fewer ads. They're checking out of broadcast radio, they're checking out of broadcast TV, they're more likely to subscribe to premium ad-free content services, and so they're not hearing some of these jingles a lot, and so they're not getting that chance to burn in. And that's a conclusion reached by Soundout, and that's certainly a conclusion that's supported by Medium Moves the Message, because the key to a sonic identity like that is, in fact, repetition. It is to burn it in. It can take a very long time for those jingles to be very, very familiar to you. Certainly a couple of the most familiar ones. I've already mentioned State Farm. I've mentioned Nationwide. A third one that's in the top 5 is Liberty Mutual. You can probably sing that one in your head as well. Interestingly, Geico does not really have one, but a lot of the insurance companies do. But I love jingles. I love sonic branding. And the action step for you, if you're a podcaster, is this. Make a list of how you want people to feel about your podcast. How do you want people to feel about your podcast? What is the mood or the frame of mind that you want to put them in before they listen to your show? And find music that fits that as exactly as you can. We just changed our music on the Sounds Profitable podcast, believe it or not, to go back to some music that I used to use on my I Hear Things podcast. And I used to get a lot of comments and compliments from people about that music, that it relaxed them, it put them at ease, it told them this is going to be a calm space to talk about podcasting. And I always enjoyed that and took that to heart. So we're actually going to be bringing that music back and using that in the Sounds Profitable podcast. But take the music and the sonic branding of your podcast seriously, give it time to burn in, use it liberally, and really take the time to choose something that suits the mood and the feeling that you want people to have when they listen to your podcast. I encourage you to download the report. It's fascinating. I go very deep on jingles. Again, it's from Soundout, and we'll put a link to that below this video. Again, I'm Tom Webster. Thanks so much for watching Data Decoded. We'll see you next time.